Well, hello everybody. We are so excited. It's your mom, John. Matt's going to be like, "What are we talking about?" Daryn, go
Yep.
ahead. It's your
It's your
dad, Daryn.
father, Daryn. Don't worry, our guest has no idea what he's about to get himself
No.
into. But normal,
I've
you
listened
guys
to a
know.
podcast.
Okay, he know. Okay, he
Listen,
Okay,
knows.
good.
So you
He
understand
know
I'm father and he's mother. That's how it
Yeah.
works. Yes.
Yes, today is such a special and exciting episode for us here at Shaken and Disturbed. Joining us is ABC News Chief National Correspondent Matt
Yeah.
Gutman. Matt, welcome to Shaken and Disturbed.
thanks, John and Darren. How you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
See, the
right.
mother father confused
Don,
you. That's
I
how
do
it
with the
goes.
D and
Yeah.
the J.
It's
You
a
know,
it's a whole thing here. That's right.
Don and
Yes.
Well,
Jaren.
that's
Yes.
right. Oh, we've never been
Jaren.
told that. I
Mm,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Guys,
you.
Matt is the host of the brand new true crime podcast, Devil in the Desert, which just launched on June 17th. And I want to make this point. It went straight to #1 on Apple
That's
Podcasts.
right.
Matt, first of all, how did that feel? Because especially this day and age, true crime, getting a podcast at #1, that is no easy feat. How did you feel when you woke up and found that out?
Well, I'll tell you that when we were doing the table reads, which was my favorite part, it's like practice, like I was the
Yeah.
guy who really enjoyed practice because that's where everybody's freest. And you're reading the stuff and they're playing the sound, and that's before the music comes in. And Evan Viola did a great job on the music as he always does. But yeah, I'm like, I've been with this story for 11 years.
Yeah.
I first heard about it in 2014 before anybody did because I knew the DA who was involved. And I knew it was like a wild story, but it hadn't fully spun out. Like it was still happening. We didn't know it at the time. So we're doing these table reads, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting the chills reading this again and hearing the sound because it's been a few years since I heard the characters that I interviewed speak again. And I literally got chills. I'm like, this is really good. And we have the writers were amazing, and the producers who worked on it, especially Susie Liu and Madeline Wood, and a bunch of others did a fantastic job. And so, like, our work together and, with 2020 has just like made something really fun. And so we knew it was good,
Yeah.
but we didn't know it was like chart topping good, but we hoped
Yeah.
it would be.
I mean, the story alone is, I should say, for those who haven't listened, you absolutely should, because the story is
Yeah.
absolutely wild. But Matt, I want you to know, and I said this to John earlier today, I live in LA and we wanted to move to Newport Beach, and I am marrying an Iranian. So
So
it
look
hit
Wow.
out. Yeah.
double
Yeah.
close to home for sure.
Just don't get involved in the dispensary business, which is a
Yeah.
cash only business. That
Good point.
Yeah, good point. I will avoid that moving forward, but it definitely felt a little familiar. Yeah.
because you guys are kind of ribald on this in this podcast, like one of the worries for me was like the first episode, which John, aka Don, knows well. Um,
Thank you. Yes.
there is a brutal mutilation of a very important part of a man's body involved, and I was
Yeah.
worried that people would be like, "Ew,"
Well,
Yeah.
Matt, can I
like
tell you? I now that you've said that, I just want to say I had a question that I deleted where I was like, I wanted to be like, Matt, man to man, we got to
yeah.
talk about, but I didn't know
Yeah.
if you'd go for that. But let's talk about that because it's one of the most, if not the most disturbing detail of this case.
And by the way, I was going to say, I think that was the first thing I texted John. I was
Yeah, she
like,
did. Yeah.
his penis
Yeah.
cut,
Yeah.
so
She said
yeah,
it. I knew
yeah.
Yeah, there we
you
go.
broke the
There we
penis barrier.
I did.
That's right.
If it's going to
What
be
Matt,
Someone
anyone, it's
had to
going to be
do it.
me. Yeah. Yeah.
But Matt, do you want to give us a little of a synopsis here for maybe
Yeah.
listeners of our show that want to go check it out, including that very unfortunate, disturbing detail, if you don't mind, because it is a big part of what actually is going on here. Like how do you describe this to people who haven't
I
listened
mean,
yet?
it's like a really LA story or Southern California story, right? Because it opens and you have this woman, her name is Mary Barnes, and she basically wakes up in a new place where she just moved into and spent a couple of days with cold steel pressed to the back of her head.
Yeah.
And somebody in a funny accent whispers in her ear, "It's not about you."
Ew, I mean, that was too ASMR for me, Matt. We gotta
And
try that again.
yeah, anyway,
No.
and that's where this thing starts. And
Yeah.
basically, she then hears the guy who owns the place. His name is Michael, or who she's rooming with, being dragged down the steps, and it's thump, thump, thump,
Mhm.
thump. She's cuffed and blindfolded. That's his head hitting every stair. They beat this guy. They torture this guy. She doesn't know who these people are. And eventually they're stuffed in a van, driven out to the Mojave Desert. And what you have to understand is that this is happening in the early 2010s. And the dispensary business was booming. And it still is, but it was really sort of the Wild West of the dispensary marijuana
Yeah.
world. And so there are all these guys who were very young who suddenly had a lot of cash on their hands, because you can't put cash money earned from dispensary businesses into the bank. It's legal in California, but not federally. And the banks have to be federally recognized. So the FDIC wouldn't allow it. So there are lots of dudes in Southern California with lots of cash. And apparently this guy had been surveilled for a long time. And the assailants thought that he'd stored $1 million in cash somewhere in a gold mine in the Mojave Desert, because they'd tracked him going there.
Can I pause you for just
And
1 second, Matt? Because
yeah,
how did they think of that rumor? Was that like, did they just like, where did they come up with that they were hiding $1 million?
I don't want to spoil too much, but
Okay.
there was an inside man. There was a guy who worked
Okay.
in the dispensary. Everybody's involved in the dispensary business in this story, basically.
Right.
The main characters are. And they saw this guy, Michael, flashing around a lot of money. He went to Vegas. He got the, $10,000 a night suite. He was giving people, his buddies, money to gamble with, like all cash. And so they eventually, one of them was in the business, and he ended up tracking him and then putting another guy onto this case. And eventually that's where Michael finds himself in the back of a van in the Mojave Desert, being tortured and tased and beaten.
Yeah.
And they drag him out of the van. It went very funny to very sad very quickly.
No,
He gets
no.
dragged,
That's what this show
dragged.
is, to be honest.
Yeah, gets dragged out of the van. And the assailants are like, listen, we know you have $1 million. Tell us what it is. He's like, I don't have $1 million. I have a safety deposit box with $100,000. I'll give you everything I have. That's all I have in cash. They're like, no, we want the $1 million. And they're faking Mexican or Hispanic accents or Spanish accents.
Yeah.
And Michael and this woman, Mary Barnes, are like, they're not talking about it, but they know that that's not a legitimate, like, these people are not Mexican. And they know something is weird. They assume it's an inside job, but that the person has the wrong information. And so it gets worse. The threats get worse. We'll kill you. We'll do this. And finally, like, we're going to cut off your penis if you don't tell us where the money is. And he's like, I'll give you everything. I don't have $1 million. And they put a zip tie around Michael's penis. And Mary hears zip. And they cut it off. And after that, they pour bleach all over Michael. They kill the DNA. They kill the evidence. And Mary feels something cold put in her hands. They're tied around her back, and it's a knife. And the guy's like, hey, listen, that's a knife. I'm putting it here in the bushes or whatever. If you can get to it, you can get yourself free. Count to 100 until we leave. And she counts to, like, whatever, 10. As soon as she hears the van tires, squelching away on the gravel, she quickly scrambles to try to find the bush, pushes up the blindfold, cuts her legs free, goes to Michael, and he's a mess. And she runs out on this trail in the desert, finally finding a highway, and nobody's stopping for her because she looks like a crazy person. You wouldn't stop for her.
No, it's terrifying. Yeah.
I have to say, eventually, if I can just kind of jump ahead a little bit, is a responding officer does eventually see her.
Yeah.
And you guys listening to the show right now, you have to listen to it because you hear the first person audio of the officer,
Really
calling it in, and you can hear him being like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know exactly how he put it, but he was very kind of like taken aback because it is in the middle of the Mojave Desert. You guys do such a great job at creating the mental theater of what is happening in this woman's life at that moment, and to add that officer's commentary. I think there's additional commentary, like where he was
there are
talking.
two cops.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. There's two. Yes.
John, I was really impressed actually at their professionalism.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
Observing the scene and instead of being like, oh,
yeah, right.
I think the zip tie is still on. I think it's don't unzip it because they're like
very clinical and professional.
Very clinical.
Yeah,
and
I agree with you.
They immediately photograph the scene instead of like immediately trying to render help, which is what I would have done.
I think as a guy, I might do that too. Yeah, I'd be like, oh my god. Yeah, that's really tough.
Anyway, and so the story unfolds there. Who are the perpetrators?
Right.
Turns out Michael may or may have not known them. Mm-hmm. Where do they go? And what happens when the perpetrators realize that Newport Beach police are on their trail, and that Orange County prosecutors know what's going on. And I don't want to get too far into it, but
Yeah.
there are there are multiple flights into other countries. There's a honeypot scheme that to draw one of the suspects back
Yep.
in. There may or may not be a jailbreak.
I was
There's
just gonna say,
intrigue,
yeah.
betrayal. There's love.
There's something for
and like
everyone in this story.
exactly. And mutilation. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't love that?
You know,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you know the story from when it originally sort of broke news in the early 2010s. Obviously, you did a deeper dive on this podcast, and probably then you've been immersed in the story, you said, for a long time. But like, what was it the penis thing that you remember about hearing about the most when it came out in 2010? Like when they asked you to cover this, or you were covering it, what kind of brought you back to that moment of being like, oh yeah.
So I was a reporter based in Miami, and I've always sort of had a very eclectic career. And so I was dispatched to cover the Oscar Pistorius trial, the guy, the Blade
Wow.
Runner. Remember
Yeah.
him?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who
Shot his
his
wife,
girlfriend.
girlfriend, yeah.
And that was a huge case. And we did a 2020 about that. And so I came back from South Africa to do the 2020. And those were the heydays of 20. We spent so much, like they built a set at Times Square studio, a mock-up of the guy's house. Perfect, right to scale. It was crazy.
Wow.
And the guy we brought in was the Orange County Deputy District Attorney, Matt Murphy. And it so happened Matt Murphy wasn't working on Oscar Pistorius, but he was working on this other case. And so between takes and on the side, we started talking about this case. And I'm like, whoa, this is mind-blowing. But what I didn't know and Matt didn't know is that the craziest part of the case hadn't yet happened in 2014. That would unfold in 2015 and 2016 when I became involved as a correspondent based here in LA. And ultimately, I would forge this relationship with the main perpetrator, the mastermind, who was, I know I don't want to clinically diagnose him, but, people use, the DA has certainly used terms like sociopath and
Sure.
Right.
a person who has certain personality traits that are manipulative and also charming and kind of intriguing sometimes. And so I developed this relationship with him when he was in jail, involving letters and phone calls, and ultimately an interview with him in jail just, I think, 2 days before he was set to go on trial, which was very interesting. And, I like the guy, like there are parts of me that kind of liked him, because
They
he's
have to be
really
charming.
smart.
Yeah, they gotta be.
Daryn's talked about that on the show.
Interesting personal history. Like you said,
Totally.
he's Iranian who came here as a little kid, and I couldn't understand that. And he was a great wrestler, and I wrestled in high school, and he was in the Marines, and he was in Marine Recon, which is sort of the elite Marines. And then he was in all these businesses, and he went abroad, and he was in Venezuela, where I traveled numerous times. And he was in like weird, far-flung places in South Asia. Like we just had a lot to talk about. And there were parts of him that were very charming. I mean, he was convicted of doing some pretty horrific things to other human beings and had no remorse and never admitted it. But I could also
Just be careful with the
how
zip
people
ties, Matt,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
exactly.
Becoming friends with somebody
so-
like that could be tricky.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes.
What
Unless you
like-
like that kind of thing. And then,
did you and then we're no judgment on this
And
podcast,
then-
as we
that's
always
right.
say, no judgment. When you're like talking to him, did you like feel yourself being manipulated? Like you're smart enough to know who this guy is, and you're obviously, a really smart guy yourself, but like to your point, you liked him to an extent. He was charming, even though you know what he did. Did you feel yourself kind of being like, am I falling for this right now? Like, do I believe he didn't do it? Like,
It's a good question.
yeah.
I think it's a great question. One of the things that makes a good journalist is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and that's empathy. And so, like, if I'm in Gaza and I'm seeing people who are hungry, or their house has been blown up, or in the south of Israel, where I spent a lot of time in those kibbutzim, those communities that were obliterated and where people had lost their family members and were kidnapped, like I put myself in their shoes. I feel the empathy. I draw them out. And that's how you have this conversation. And that's how you're able to tell the story of what happened to them and bring it to the American audience, or whatever audience it is, to get them to feel just a tiny fraction of what the people on the ground are feeling or experiencing. And so I feel like that's my gift, and that's what I always try to do. And so I apply that same empathy with people like this suspect, Hossein Nayeri, as well. And yeah, I can put myself in his shoes. But then, like, after, you're being manipulated, and I've been doing this long enough to be like, no, 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 good
Yeah.
try. I mean, like, I got
Yeah.
you, but like, I'm not with you, but like, I can try to understand. But
Right.
yeah, you still can step outside yourself. But yeah, I mean, I think the way you engender trust is by actually thinking and putting yourself in that person's shoes for a
That's a
little
good
bit.
point.
And, like, one of the things that I can understand is that his personality changed. He was in Marine Recon and went surfing and got hit in the head with the board. He had a terrible accident. He was in the hospital, and he was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. He washed out of the Marines. He
Interesting.
went AWOL, and everybody in his life said that this guy's career path, life path, just sort of took a left turn after that. And it
Mm.
changed him. And is it because of the TBI? Is it because that was his latent personality and it finally had time to come through? We'll obviously never know, but I can try to at least, put myself in
Yeah.
his shoes for a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, we talk about nature versus nurture a lot on this
Yeah.
show. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Where
Let
do
me
you
ask,
fall on that divide?
I, we think it's a lot, at least I'll speak for Daryn, or at least for myself. I think it's a lot of nurture. I think a lot of life conditions affect people, especially when they're young, but
Yeah.
especially traumatic head injuries. We've talked about that a lot on the show too, with
Mm.
different episodes. All of that impacts your every decision you make, from when you brush your teeth, when you eat your
Yeah.
next meal. Like, it's a domino effect personally, but Daryn, do you agree? I
Yeah,
think.
there's sort of like vertical and then horizontal connections. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And vertical are the things that you're born with, your genes or this or that. Some things are
Mm.
predisposed. You might have a
Yeah.
chemical imbalance, for example. Depression works like that. But I do find 99.9% of the time with cases and people that are murderers and terrible people, something always happened to them when they were younger.
Yeah.
Abuse, something,
Totally.
an injury, an accident. It's without a doubt that this happened. It's very rare that it's just like, I was walking along one day and just thought, like, I'm going to shoot this guy in the face and call it a day. Like, it never happens like that. And so I do think that nurture plays probably a bigger role, in the sense that that feels like something that we could probably prevent. I don't know how much we could prevent,
Mm.
genes and things like that from
Good point.
happening.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, even though I do agree with you, and I
Such a
see
Yeah, tell
seen it.
journalist. Yeah, such a reporter. God.
Do any of us get through life without suffering the slings and arrows of what life has to offer? Like, does anybody really have? I mean, maybe these are very specific types of trauma that you're talking about.
No,
I agree with
I
you.
think
Yeah.
that's a good point, and I think that shows that when those types of arrows come at you, how you deal with that, your sling is what you're born with. Like, you and I might handle
Mhm.
adversity a lot better than someone who didn't maybe grow up as well as us. And so I do think they are absolutely married. I don't think it's like a 50-50, but I think they're absolutely go hand in hand for sure.
I'll
Yeah.
buy that.
Yeah.
Matt's into that.
Good.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you this. I know we have a couple more minutes with you here, but were there any investigative twists that genuinely caught you off guard as you were doing this show? Because like we said, you've been following it for so long, but by the time you got to recording it, did you know everything you were going to say, or did you find some new things out?
There were some parts of one of the things that this case hinges on is the suspect, Hossein Nayeri, not a suspect, he's the perpetrator, um, his ex-wife, married at the time. And she was complicit in a lot of the stuff that he was doing,
Mm.
from making poison hamburger patties to surveillance to high-speed chases. Like, it was her car. Like, she was complicit, and she was in law school, came from a very prominent family, and basically the cops were onto her, and they did a proffer. And so we have the audio from this sit down where they are like, listen, it was a come to Jesus conversation. Like, we have you as a conspirator, a co-conspirator to kidnapping, mayhem, mutilation. You're going to law school? You think you're going to be a lawyer? No, you're going to spend the rest of your life possibly in prison. Tell
Yeah.
us everything you know, or we're just going to do what we were going to do.
Right.
And there was this come to, and then she not only tells them, she ends up helping them
Mm-hmm.
perpetrate this incredible ruse to get this guy Hossein Nayeri out of Iran and into a country that has friendly extradition treaties with the US, and it would actually enact it in a story that is just so bonkers that it's kind of hard to believe. It's so cloak and dagger. It's like out of a Jason Bourne type of thing, light.
It is.
But so like hearing the details of that proffer again in more
I see.
intimate way, and the conversations behind closed doors was really interesting. But just hearing the sound again, it had been like 5 years since I'd done the original version of this story for 2020, and it was chilling. And the most chilling were the recordings of the phone conversations between this wife, who became an ex-wife, Courtney Shigarian, and the perpetrator, Hossein Nayeri, because you could hear how he was manipulating her, how he,
Wow.
even though she was recording him now, she was in on it, but he was manipulating her, the tone in his voice, the shift in his voice. You could totally see how this person tortured people and yet made
Wow.
them love him and want to do stuff for him, and how he scared people. And that's, I think, the most shocking part. He
Yeah.
seemed very, very scary when I listened to those tapes again,
Mm.
specifically those phone calls. By the way, he started dating her when she was 16 and he was 23. So he like
Mm.
owned
Got his
her in a
claws
way.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, like very early.
Obviously, the details of this case are wild. I mean, the story is almost like a movie script. Like it just kind of unfolds even more and more and more. I mean, you could really sort of do that. What do you hope after people finish all 6 episodes? What do you hope listeners will take away from the podcast, kind of beyond the shocking details, the penis incident, the ex-wife? Like, what do you hope that listeners kind of walk away with?
I think that there is some redemptive value here. I think that the people aside from this perpetrator, Hussein Nayeri, end up doing the right thing. Courtney does the right thing with the police and then the district attorney's office. She ends up passing law school, passing the bar. She is now a lawyer. She's a mom. She remarried. She has a real life. And she was able to break away from him with the help of her family, who he had iced her away from, um, and create a new life. I think the DA showed that they can prosecute this story prosecute this case without a lot of physical evidence. And I think the jury ended up doing the right thing. And there's one moment in court. Oh, there's one moment in court where the lead prosecutor, Matt Murphy, who's like such a star, he knows he needs the jury to see the real Hossein Nayeri, because the guy was known for his composure. And he talks, and it's very sort of methodical and kind of quiet. He's got this gravelly voice. It's very, very kind of like this. And, he's physically impressive. He's like not a weightlifter, but like born with traps, one of those people who's like
A wrestler.
rounded shoulders.
Ugh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he
those
was a wrestler,
guys.
and like he
Right.
maintained the body of a wrestler even in his late 30s and 40s. Turned out, and so eventually there is something that happens in court, which I'm not going to tell everybody,
Yeah.
but one of the jurors dug him. And that's a twist. There was a holdout in the jury. He
Oh,
was
okay.
able, without ever like talking to this person, he was able to get this young woman on his side, to enlist her. That's how good he was.
Wow.
And yet the jury ended up doing the right thing at the end. So like, I think there is redemptive value in the
Yeah, yeah.
justice system, in police. Like they actually did a good job. They investigated it well. And the people who started out as villains didn't all end up as villains, although the chief villain,
Did.
stayed a villain.
Yeah.
My very last question, I was wondering what you think he would think of this podcast if he's listened to it. Like, do you have any thoughts about what you might expect his reaction to be?
Well, Matt, I think it was, oh, I can't do it. I think it was very unfair. He would
That's
probably say
good.
he wouldn't like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
He
probably
probably
not,
wouldn't
right?
love it.
No, probably not.
Well, he denies it to this day, right? I mean,
He continues to deny it. He
Right.
just had an appeal. Yeah.
Okay.
He says that it's kind of typical, but I mean, maybe there is merit to the appeal. I really don't know. But he said that his representation was poor. He blames his defense attorney. He blames Matt Murphy and the prosecutors. He says the trial wasn't fair. The investigation wasn't. He blames Courtney for turning on him, and the deal that they offered her. I'm sure you've heard this before. It's pretty much everybody else's
else.
fault.
Yeah. Not
But
one,
again,
I
not
don't know.
one
Maybe his
onus.
appeal will go through. I don't know. Maybe the judge will find some validity in it. I don't know.
Well, we'll keep an eye on this one because it seems fascinating. So thank you for being on the show today.
Matt Gutman, thank you so much for your time. You're
Yes.
amazing, and
Yeah,
the
Daryn,
podcast
thank
is
you.
amazing. So check out Devil in the Desert. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Matt. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye.